At the moment, I've got a few technical issues onto Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and I will do my very level best to work. Yes, I think we're up. Right, okay. So I'm going to be simultaneously on YouTube, Instagram, and on Facebook Live. I am kind of doing this on my own as well, so stick with me. If there are any technical issues, I'll do my very, very best to try and handle them. We are a little bit past time, but I'm guessing there's still a fair few people who are doing PE with Joe Wicks, so I'll get started. First of all, before I start answering some questions, I just wanted to it's a bee fly. Bee flies are completely harmless, although they do look somewhat like a bumblebee. Right now what they're doing is proboscis, which has the same function that a butterfly's proboscis would have, but instead of it being coiled up like a watch spring, it's always extended like that. So that's the characteristic way that you will know that it is a bee fly. One of the most intriguing things about them is the fact that they look so much like bees, and despite the fact that they are completely harmless, they don't have any sting, they don't bite whatsoever, they look a bit like bees, and so many other animals that might leave a stinging bee alone will leave them be. And this is something called mimicry. I've used Logan's little thing there. Look at that, it's magic. To describe mimicry. Mimicry is essentially, therefore, gains a competitive advantage because other animals will leave it alone. So I've got some examples of mimics here. This here is a poisonous monarch butterfly, and this is a viceroy butterfly, which looks exactly the same and yet has no poison whatsoever. It doesn't have to use the energy that a monarch butterfly has to use to create those distasteful toxins in its flesh. Instead, it looks the same, therefore other animals leave it alone. This one is one of my personal favorites. That's a caterpillar. That is a moth caterpillar, which looks like a snake. It looks like a snake, and so birds fly in, hoping to get a caterpillar meal, take one look at it and go, ah, fly away and leave it well alone. So this is all about mimicry. If you want to get technical, this is particularly called Batesian mimicry. Batesian mimicry is where you have one model, which is poisonous or toxic, and another animal that looks like it that is not, and it's named after. What do you think this is? You get absolutely no prizes for a feather. I'll give you a clue. This is a feather from the world's largest kind of parrot. So let's see if we've got anybody who can tell me what might have this. Anyone got some comments they'd like to throw up? Thinking what this might be? I'm looking out. So it is the world's largest kind of parrot, and there are several different kinds of blue parrot. The others, Lear's macaw, Spix's macaw. This is from a hyacinth macaw, and this is a flight feather. So if I compare that to this from a much bigger bird, that is from a swan in my back garden, a mute swan, which is the world's largest flying bird. They can be 20 kilos and still get airborne, and yet look at how different they are. So this one here is a flight feather. It's much more sturdy, much more rigid, and that is used in its wing to help it get airborne, whereas this here is part of its plumage. It's used to waterproof it, to keep it warm, and so they are much more spongy, as you can see. Right, let's move on to our next question. Right, so, before I say that, so sadly, hyacinth macaw, the world's largest species of parrot, a quite closely related one was Spix's macaw. Spix's macaw was the model used for the parrot in the film Rio, which I'm sure many of you will have seen. And very sadly, in 2018, the last Spix's macaw was recorded in the wild. They are now believed to be extinct in the wild, which obviously is incredibly sad. Actually, we've got lots of people who come in saying hyacinth macaw. Really good news. Yeah, lots and lots. Oh, lots of people are saying the quality's not good. I'm really sorry, guys. I have a feeling that probably our download speeds have been cut back because obviously there's so much demand for internet at the moment. It might be worth trying the YouTube channel. So if you go to no YouTube, just as bad, is it? Okay, really sorry about this, you guys. I'm obviously doing the best I can. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to our next question. And are there any animals that have no brains at all? Well, as far as the animal that has the biggest brain, it has a tooth that looks like that. Anyone care to take a guess as to what it might be? Let's see if we've got anything coming in. Anyone got any ideas? What might have a tooth like that? While you're thinking about it, I'll tell you about the animals with the smallest brain. Actually, lots and lots of invertebrates don't have anything that we could consider to be a brain at all. They don't have one large invertebrate. You know, even a big Goliath bird-eating tarantula doesn't have what we would consider to be a brain. This, though, is from, yes, Tim Scoons. Absolutely hit the planet. Their brain can be as much as 9 kilos for the biggest males. For some perspective, that's about the same size as a sack of potatoes. Sperm whales are animal record breakers in lots of other ways as well. So they are the loudest animal on the planet. They can get up to 220 decibels in their blasts of sound, which are used to immobilize their prey. So, for example, things like giant squid, a blast of sound through the water can be used to reduce a squid to a non-moving object that a blue whale can feast on. Okay, moving on to our next question. Maya Rose Newman, who is 8 years old, asks, do fish have ears? Well, clearly they don't have external ears. You know, any animal that's underwater is going to do its very best to reduce drag, to be streamlined, to be hydrodynamic. So having external ears like these is not a good idea, but they do have the ability to hear. So for many whales or dolphins, that usually involves using the jaw, have what we would consider to be ears, even inner ears. Instead, they have a super sense, and their super sense is called the lateral line. So to demonstrate that, I have one of Logan's pet sharks, and running down the length of it, between the counter shading coloration, there is a special organ called the lateral line. The lateral line is effectively a trench that's filled with very, very fine hairs called cilia, and those can pick up vibration in the water, so they can detect the wake of a fish that's long gone after it's swum past. And the lateral line is in some ways functioning like an ear for fish. Sharks have lots of other super senses. So in the snout, there are a group of organs called the ampullae of Lorenzini, which can detect weak electrical fields in the water, such as are generated by the moving muscles of their prey. I feel a little bit weird talking about proper science with a stuffed toy shark, but I don't know, it's kind of cute, I guess. Let's move on to our next question. So Francesca Beals would like to know what I can do now to start becoming a zoologist. So unfortunately, you didn't put in your age here, Francesca, but it kind of doesn't matter. I would say that get started now. You know, the natural world is so big, so vast. There is simply so much to learn that you should just get started learning as much as you possibly can. And you are never, ever too young to do that. So learn as many facts as you can about the wild world. Anytime you see anything in nature that you don't understand, try and find a reason for it. Try and find a cause. Try and understand it. You know, if you hear a sound outside, you hear a bird song, then come back and try and find out what made that song. Try and find out what that bird might have been trying to say. You are never too young to start learning, but you have to start early because the natural world is huge. It's vast. It's infinite. There are as many as 8 million described species on the planet today, but there could be easily 20 million out there. There are plenty more left to be described. You could study nothing else but British fish as you possibly can. Okay, Nigel Garnsworthy, who's 8, asks, what's the difference between warm-blooded and cold-blooded animals? It's a great question. It's quite a big answer. And generally speaking, in biology, we don't really use the term warm-blooded. It will be cold. So the thermal imaging camera is recognizing that snake as being dark in color, as being black, because its body temperature is probably about 6 or 7 degrees centigrade. However, when we placed it down on a warm piece of tin, almost immediately it started to warm up. So the heat from the tin is being absorbed by the snake, and over time, it starts to generate heat in its body and therefore energy, which it can use to get up and move. So you can see here the black snake being put down onto that warm piece of tin, and it's starting to absorb the energy itself. So the big difference between what we commonly call cold-blooded animals and warm-blooded animals is how they generate their heat. We, as mammals, eat food, burn off those calories to create a constant temperature in our bodies, which stays fairly well stable throughout our lives, throughout our day. Reptiles, amphibians, most fish will instead generate heat from the ambient environment around them. So there are several ways of actually expressing that in science, as amphibians and fish. And if you want to get really flash, then poikilothermic is an animal that tracks the ambient temperature of the streaming is speeding up. I'm so sorry if it isn't. Unfortunately, I'm up in the back end of nowhere, so my speed isn't quite good enough. But let me try with a very. Let's see who can be my first answer for the easiest of bird songs. It's not an owl, Mackie Lowe on Instagram. It is, yes, Ben Pets, absolutely spot on. It is, of course, a cuckoo. So just beginning to turn up now this time of year in spring as migrants. They will have been away, probably in sub-Saharan Africa for most of the winter, starting to come back to the UK right now. Okay, so this is one of my very favorite bird songs in the whole world and one of the weirdest. Anybody out there, tell me what this might be. So imagine you're on a Scottish loch and you can hear this eerie sound. I can guarantee it's not a curlew either. That's a very good guess, Isaac. This is, so in North America, they're known as loons because the sound kind of sounds like someone a little bit loopy. It is, in fact, the Great Northern Diveband. Let's go one more. This is a bird which is found right here where I live. In fact, it's our most conspicuous bird around here. And we see them soaring over us the whole time. Anyone got any ideas what this might be? So, who've we got? This is a bird which is one of the most successful reintroductions in the UK. In fact, it's probably one of them. Well done, sir. Absolutely spot on. That is a red kite. This is a bird that's gone from total local extinction in our area to being one of our most conspicuous birds. I don't know if you noticed that, but Hells, pop back in again. Hells has our twins strapped on, thankfully, fast to do that. You know, one of them is by their calls. There's an awful lot of birds in this country that will be very difficult to tell apart unless you start to listen to their calls. So hard. Also, actually, can tell you an awful lot about how birds are closely related than appear to be. You know, you listen to a garden warbler and a blackcap, and their songs are so close. They're so closely aligned, but the two birds are nothing like each other. So yeah, learning about sounds is a really good place to start. Okay, so we have Tristan Aitken who asks, how deep can a tardigrade live? This is an absolutely genius question. So I think that this is one of the most interesting creatures on the planet. They're teeny tiny. They're only about 1.5 millimeters in size. But if you look at them under a scanning microscope, they look something like that. And these are one of the great survivors of all creatures, tardigrades or water bears. There are millions and millions of them out there. I think there's about 900 different species. And this is an animal that has been fired into space, that has been exposed to temperatures of 120 degrees positive and down almost to absolute zero, and they still have survived. This is a creature that has been rehydrated, having been in stasis for decades. They are truly one of the toughest animals on Earth. In terms of how deep down they go, they are definitely known to live in our deep seas, and they have been exposed to pressure that is in depth. So yeah, there is no doubt that tardigrades would be able to survive at the very, very deepest of temperature, very, very deepest of temperatures. Deepest of temperatures? Seriously, sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. Big shout out to Oak Tree Class from Cold Endgame Primary in Essex. Hello, you all. Thank you very much for sticking with me despite the terrible, terrible quality. What else have we got? Darcy, Cameron, and Hugh watching from Wales. And Cameron says, how do you know what different snakes are? Well, if I tilted up all of these cameras up to the shelves above me, you would see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. I spend my my entire life reading and studying, and particularly if I'm going to one special place, I will spend weeks beforehand burying myself in the books and just trying to learn as many of them as I possibly can, which is tricky because, you know, there's several thousand different species of snakes and some of them look very, very similar to each other. Okay, right, we'll move on now to Sophie Aldridge, who is 9, and asks, how do poisonous snakes have enough venom to last their lifetime? Well, there's two different things there, one of which is my absolute bugbear, which is the difference between poison and venom. Simply put, the two things are very different. So poison has to be eaten to have its lethal effect. Venom has to be injected into the bloodstream. So yeah, simply put, if you eat it and you die, then it's poison. And if it bites you and you die, then it's venom. But the key part, a skeleton here of a viper. I get that close to the camera, you can see beautiful, beautiful skeleton, several hundred bones there, and the extraordinary fangs at the front, which it uses to inject its venom. That venom itself is a very complicated substance, and the closest thing that we have to it is our own spit. So venom is generated in bites and injects its venom. It'll take a little while to regenerate, but it does regenerate, just as your spit always comes back. So throughout its life, a snake is creating new venom over and over and over again. Emma Truman asks, do all animals see in black and white? It's a terrific question, and it's one that we are really starting to understand nowadays. So the way that you can tell how an animal sees is by examining their retina. There are two different kinds of cells in the back of retina, rods and cones. Cones are responsible for perceiving color, rods for perceiving light. So we can get an idea by studying those and comparing them to our own eyes to get some kind of idea of what the world looks like for a particular animal's eyes. White vision, and you know, that could well be very common for animals that are nocturnal. Certainly if we look in low light, we don't see in color either, we see in black and white. There are though some animals that see so much better in color than we as humans could ever do. So this is a stomatopod or mantis shrimp, and they are believed to have the finest color vision of any creatures. So they see in as many as 16 different pigments, like 4 times greater than we do as human beings. They probably perceive the world in a whole different scope of color than we human beings ever could. Just had one come through. Jude Giltro asks, what's the strongest animal on Earth? Pound for pound, Dynasties Hercules, the Hercules beetle, able to withstand 850 times its own body weight. And that is in the Guinness Book of Animal Records as being the strongest animal on Earth. We've got Isaac and Esther Moorhead want to know, how fast is a gannet in flat out flight? Not that fast, not particularly special, but when they dive towards the water, they've been clocked at between 50 and 60 miles an hour, which is just phenomenal. It takes them down through the water to spear fish below the surface. They have special adaptations in their body to make sure that they don't basically knock themselves out and blow their brains out by hitting the water at such speeds. And they are one of the most extraordinary wildlife spectacles that we have right here in the UK. Okay, so we have... This is a good one. Sarah Spinner asks, what animal has the strongest immune system? So lots of different potential answers to that question. I'm going to go straight to a kind of easy one. The strongest that I have seen is from crocodilians. So we, a few years back in the Northern Territories of Australia, caught a large male crocodile who'd become a problem animal. He'd been badly injured and was starting to target people. And he was missing 2 of his legs completely. He was living in murky, muddy water, and yet his limbs had not got infected. They were completely missing, and he was healing. So there is almost instantly starts to get infected. Compare that to a crocodile that can lose a limb and can heal up without getting infected. Got loads and loads of questions that are coming in, thousands and thousands of people asking questions. Which this one here, Ted Donnelly, how long can a seal hold its breath for? Depends what kind of a seal it is. The best divers of all seals are the elephant seals, which have been known to stay underwater for nearly an hour, and certainly can dive down to as much as 1,000 meters. They are okay. So we have John Bowden, who is 10 years old and has sent in a photo. This is a really cool one. So John was on holiday and he saw this baby shark. This is a shark pup, a reef shark pup that is. So there's lots of possibilities here. In all likelihood, it is a genetic defect, a lack of melanin, which is a dark pigment in the skin of animals, which is basically missing. I mean, this is something that happens to people sometimes. You see, I have friends who have vitiligo, which is like a pale pigmentation, lack of melanin in the skin. That's probably what this is, but there is an intriguing possibility, which I'm just going to throw out there, which is that there are quite a lot of animals that look different as youngsters and as adults. So, for example, this is a zebra shark. That's it as an adult. You can see covered in spots like that. And it looks very, very different to the same animal as a youngster. So that is a leopard or zebra shark pup. Now, it is quite common for animals to change in their morphology, in their shape, in their color, from being a youngster to being an adult. So let's have another obvious example. This is a red deer stag. You can see it there, massive male with a huge antlers, shaggy but plain coloration to its coat. And this is a youngster. You can see it's colored with dappled dots, and those help it to hide out in long grass, in dappled light, while its parents are off fending for themselves and coming back, and this is particularly before it's weaned. So having an animal that has different coloration as a youngster and as an adult is quite a common thing, and there is an outside possibility that that could be essentially a shark pup, which has different coloration as a youngster to enable it to camouflage in a different environment to what the adult animal is going to be living in. And this leads directly on to my next question, which is from Genevieve and Florence Drinkwater. Awesome names. And they want to know, why do baby Komodo dragons climb trees, but the adults don't? Again, part of very much the same question. As small Komodo dragons, essentially their main function in life is to try and get away from predators, because pretty much everything wants to eat them. They're small, they're lightweight in body, so they can clamber and climb up trees to be able to evade the attention of predators. An adult Komodo dragon, which has a skull that looks like that, could weigh well over 100 kilos. It has nothing natural to fear in its environment. There is nothing on it. So it can be terrestrial, and its prime function is on feeding on pretty much anything that it wants to sink those teeth into. So essentially, young Komodo dragons and adult Komodo dragons are living completely different lives. And the study of this in biology is called ontogeny. This is the study of how animals change throughout their lives from youngsters to adults. There are some incredible animals, let's see, I've got a photo of one of these here, which maintain their juvenile characteristics throughout their entire life. This is known as neoteny. And one of the best known examples is this. Anybody out there tell me what this rather fabulous creature is? Yeah, I've got already popping up. Charlie, axolotl. Yes, on an axolotl. Insta, we have Ben Mooper, and Ben asks, how does a squid squirt its ink? Okay, well, actually, that links quite well to the previous question, which when I was talking about melanin. So melanin is a dark pigment that we have in our skins, and many animals have available to them. Squid and octopuses and cuttlefish can use that melanin to create ink. Effectively, what they do is they suspend it in mucus, like they suspend it in a kind of almost like spit. They can squeeze their ink sac, remove that melanin and the snot, the spit that it's encased in, into the water, and it creates this billowing cloud around the animal. Now, there's two ways that can work. So the first way is creating what appears to be like a smoke screen, like a way that effectively the animal is just hidden behind a wall of ink, and it can make good its escape. There's also a suggestion that it might be what's called a pseudomorph. A pseudomorph is effectively a phantom that is created by the squid, the cuttlefish, the octopus, and it's a thing in the water which looks a little bit like the octopus itself, and a predator may well focus on that, allowing the octopus to make good its escape. Okay, so we are moving on to our next question. Oh, this is a good one. How do whales sleep? I've got a good one from Helen. What's your question?
You do that one first.
Okay, so how do whales sleep? Okay, so most of the time, whales, migrating birds, and dolphins will do something called unihemispheric slow wave sleep. What this is that they shut down half of their brain, which goes to sleep, while the other half takes care of simple motor functions like swimming, or in migrating birds, like flying. However, every once in a while, this will happen. So this was in Dominica, in the Caribbean. Those are two sperm whales, and that little dot there is me. So these sperm whales were not practicing unihemispheric slow wave sleep. They were out cold. They might as well have been snoring. This is much less common. An animal that is fully asleep like this underwater is clearly quite vulnerable. Particularly the youngsters will be vulnerable to predation from things like orca or possibly even large sharks. So this doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it usually happens together in large groups. So you could have sperm whales, many of them coming together, hanging in the water like this, completely vertical, out cold. They might as well have been snoring. Yes, Hels, we've got another question.
Well, lots of people sending in their pictures of them tuning in, which is really nice. And lots of people asking, if a snake bites another snake, does it take its own antivenom?
If a snake bites another snake, does it take effect as it has its own antivenom? It depends on the species. So some kinds of snake are particularly resilient to other snakes' venom. But there are also plenty of snakes that specialize in feeding on snakes. So king cobras, for example, obviously their venom is very potent against other snakes, because that is their primary prey. Things like indigo snakes and crebos. These are snakes that focus on feeding on other snakes, and no, the other snakes are not completely impervious to their venom, although they can well be impervious to their own venom or to the venom of others of their own species. There's one here saying, can't sharks swim in fresh water? The answer to that is some of them can. The bull shark is one which is very capable of shedding salt from its blood, and therefore being able to swim thousands of miles upstream, particularly in things like like Karen George asks, can you set us a project that we can do in our gardens? Okay, so this is obviously a really good one. We're all self-isolating. We're trying to find ways that we can keep ourselves busy, hopefully still keeping involved with the natural world. I can suggest, if you go to scouts.org.uk, their Great Indoors campaign has loads and loads of ideas, well over 100 ideas of things that you can do at home. I put together a couple of suggestions. One of them is using a trail cam. So I've been doing this with little Logan, our toddler. We had something was going through our bins the other day, so I put out this trail cam to try and find out what was doing it. We got some amazing images of foxes going through our bins. The image that I didn't show, Logan, was this. I'm not sure if this will show up on your screens, but this, just hopping into the image there, is a massive giant rat, which essentially has been hopping in, nicking what remains of our bins, and hopping off and doubtlessly caching it somewhere in our garden. I very definitely did not show him that. Now, obviously, not everyone has access to a trail cam. So one thing that you could do instead is create your own sneaky animal tracker. And an easy way of doing that is to make a cardboard box with a little entrance and maybe an exit as well. And what you need to do is place this on the ground, a little bit of food inside of it, something like peanut butter or jam, something that is going to attract in animals. And then you need to put a runway here. And that runway ideally would have a sponge with some ink in it and then a bit of white paper inside the box. If not that, then just something like flour or sand or anything which is going to preserve a footprint. Animal goes into the box looking for the nice smelly substance, leaves its tracks behind it, and you can find online guides to all of the footprints of small British mammals. It can tell you whether you've got a hedgehog in your garden or whether you've got voles, or potentially, if, like me, you've got a giant brown rat. Another possibility is to create a bug hotel. So this one here, I would love to pretend that I had done this myself. Obviously, I didn't. I didn't suggest bird boxes because bird boxes need to be made really well, need to be made to last. A bug hotel can be made out of pretty much anything. I mean, if you do make it out of cardboard and it starts to fall apart, then it's no massive problem because actually most bugs and invertebrates love rotten habitats. Bits of bamboo like this are great for lacewings and solitary bees and ladybirds to nest in, and this is particularly going to be useful when again, I'd love to say I made this one myself. I didn't, I bought it, but any kind of fat base, something like suet, which you then plug full of seeds and nuts, you can melt this up, you can whack it into a coconut husk, you can whack it into, I don't know, an old jug or something, stick it in your back garden. The birds absolutely love it. So as a clue, this is one of the best known, best loved songs of any bird in the world. A famous romantic poet wrote an ode to this bird. It's one that's not a robin, that's Jacob there. Reese, not a blue tit. Anyone else? Hummingbird. A hummingbird, we don't get hummingbirds in the UK. Nice try though. I've got another robin, another blackbird. Well, actually, it is quite a fluted call. It doesn't sound that distinct from a blackbird. It could be. Blackbirds have an absolutely beautiful call. Yes! Who's that? We have Kira, who's got in touch to say a nightingale, and Elsie as well, also in there with nightingale. Absolutely stunning bird. These could well be turning up in our countryside pretty soon. Okay, how's about this? Think the coast. Think the coast, think a bird with a long curved bill. So this is a bird which, oh, I've got a few coming in already. Yes, we have curlew, we found on moorland, or classically a coastal bird. We'll do one more of these and then we'll move on. Sorry, Hels, what was that you were about to say about the quality?
On YouTube.
So on YouTube, Hels is suggesting that if you want to improve the quality, you can go to the top right-hand corner. There are 3 dots, and if you do the down arrow,
just press it to reduce to 25.
Reduce it to 25. I'm sorry, it's the best I've got to offer. Yeah, right. Okay, we'll do one last call. So this is a bird that again you will find at the coast. Anyone got any ideas? It's not a seagull. Got quite a lot of people on Insta coming in with a seagull. It is most definitely not a dodo, Elliot, although thank you very much for trying. We have, what else have we got? Oh, Rosie Havard, age 10, got the curlew for the last one. Pelican from Beck. Anna says a puffin. No, although actually I can hear quite a bit of what sounds a little bit like puffin in there. Still not seeing anyone. Okay, so little clue. This is a duck that tends to live at sea, and they're best known for being massively overexploited for their feathers, which have been used in our duvets in the past. Anyone? Ooh. Ooh. I've got lots and lots of people saying puffin. That one in the background really sounds like puffin. It's very, very close, but yes, spot on. We have Alex there saying an eider. Alex, you are an absolute legend, sir. Yes, that is indeed an eider duck. Okay, right, so moving on. What's our next question? So Sam D from Instagram and Charlie Hansen both ask, what effect on the animal world can we expect from COVID-19? Could this spread to other primates? That's an amazing question and a really, really interesting one. Obviously, we're just starting to understand the spread of this virus, where it comes from and where it could potentially go to. Any of you who will have seen the new series of Deadly 60, which is up on iPlayer at the moment. In fact, massive thank you to CBBC and to iPlayer as well, who've agreed to keep those programs up for an extra year on the iPlayer, so that they're available to you all to use while you're at home, homeschooling and self-isolating. Anyone who's seen that will have seen us as a team working in West Africa with chimps and with lowland gorillas, which are close relatives to us. And you'll have noticed, and also working with orangutans in Borneo as well, you'll have noticed that we've been wearing face masks. And the simple reason for that is we are so close genetically. Over 98% of our DNA is shared with those other great apes, that we absolutely can spread our pathogens to them. And it's incredibly important that we keep our distance. I would say though, that all biologists that are currently working with primates will already have those measures well in hand. You know, all biologists who work in the field with primates of its hunts. If you were to go for a wild dog working together as a pack, their effectiveness could be 85%, so dramatically more, but that's nothing compared to some of the invertebrates. So a dragonfly, a big dragonfly, could be effective in as many as 95% of its hunts, which kind of makes it one of the most effective of all predators. But if you watch something like, for example, a thorny devil, which is getting stuck into a column of ants, it gets them every time. So it's 100% effective. So maybe that's the answer. Yeah, I'm going to make that my answer. Helen has another question.
There's an amazing question from Facebook, from Thea, age 12.
Flamingos are actually pink, not just because of the brine shrimp, but because of what's inside those, the beta carotenoids which are inside those. If you could feed enough blueberries to a flamingo, and I'm not suggesting you try that, then yeah, maybe it would turn blue. I don't know. It's certainly never been tried before. Yeah, don't try it. Okay, so we have... what else have we got? Oh, this is a great question. Tam Crosswell asks, do animals have baby teeth and adult teeth like humans do? Actually, yes, that's quite common amongst mammals. So to have a set of baby or deciduous teeth, and then to get rid of those and have another set of adult teeth is quite common among teeth in a lifetime. They are losing them constantly and replacing them. We have Addie Wellman, who's 6, who asks, do snakes have any examples of symbiosis? Symbiosis, to any of you that don't know, it simply means living together. And there are several different kinds of symbiosis. You can have symbiosis where both animals benefit, where one animal benefits and the other one loses out. There is an intriguing case, which is kind of in the back of my brain somewhere, about an owl that catches certain kinds of blind thread snakes and drops them into their nest, and they feed on the bugs or the invertebrates that are there in the nest and bring down the levels of pests inside the nests. I can't quite 100% remember what that is, but it's an amazing story. We have Zach Brazier, who's 8, asks, what's the largest terrestrial prey a Spinosaurus hunted? Well, Spinosaurus is generally considered now to have been an animal that fed in the water. So it's because its dentition and the arrangement of its mouth is so similar to a crocodilian. It is generally believed to feeding on large fish, on possibly even on sharks. And the Southern Ocean down in Antarctica are full of life, even though the water itself can be down below freezing, which would definitely wipe out most animals. The way that freeze, which prevent the cells from freezing and ripping apart. Lots of people saying that I'm cutting out. I'm so sorry about that. To 10:30 for anyone who is staying on board, so we can do the full hour. I've got enough questions here to longer than lions. Singly, yes, the Bengal tiger is bigger than the biggest African lions. So yes, they probably are individually stronger. Oh, crumbs. The questions are coming in so quick. Hayden Boyd, who's 6, asks, why do praying mantis eat spiders instead of easy prey like ants? Actually, spiders are quite an unusual prey for praying mantises. Praying mantises tend to focus on soft-bodied creatures, and particularly soft-bodied fly. My voice is going completely. Soft-bodied flying invertebrates like butterflies and moths. There's lots and lots of other creatures that mimic ants in order to avoid being predated on by creatures. William Collins, how many cubs does a sun bear have? Most bears tend to have 1, sometimes 2 cubs, very, very rarely 3. Nikki Birchall, how old is the oldest fish? The oldest fish that we know of is the Greenland shark, which recently has been found out to get to over 400 years of age. Anyone who's wondering what one looks like, that's one there underneath the ice in the Arctic. They're not believed to reach maturity until 100 years of age, and they live this long despite the fact that they do it with a weird parasite living on their eyeball. It's possibly, someone was talking earlier on about symbiosis. It's possible that this parasite on its eyeball could be there as an example of symbiosis, as a way of attracting other animals towards its mouth that it might then prey on. I'm going to try and whip through as many of these questions as I possibly can. Hedgehog class, St Mary CV Primary in Crawley asked, how does the blue whale hear so well sounds traveling thousands of miles when its ear is only the size of the end of a pencil? Well, the sounds that it's listening to are mostly an infrasound. They're very, very loud, but very, very low. They travel incredibly fast and far through the water. It's more that the sounds are loud than that the whale itself has incredible hearing. It is, though, using not just the teeny tiny ear holes. Instead, it's using its jaw as a way of transmitting those sounds back towards its inner ear. Amelia Sheridan, are there any spider species that look after their young? Yes, loads of them. Wolf spiders will, for example, carry around egg sacs. They will even carry their spiderlings on their back. Scorpions, which are other arachnids, obviously also do exactly the same. Ned Lowe of Twitter asks, why is it that insects have a larval stage and don't go straight from egg to adult stage? Massive question. How can I answer that really quickly? Essentially, it's so that they can have a form that is feeding, that isn't necessarily going a great distance, and a form that can travel in order to breathe. Think mayflies. So mayflies not feeding as adults, instead using their wings that they develop in their adult stage to be able to travel to find a mate. Yes, question from Helen.
Xavier, how do animals who eat plankton grow so large?
How do animals that eat plankton grow so large? By eating a lot of it. You know, the biggest mammals on the planet, the baleen whales, are feeding on plankton. They're feeding on things like krill. They're taking in enormous amounts of calories, but from lots and lots and lots of tiny things, sometimes millions of them in every single mouthful. We have here Rory Byrne asking, are any birds poisonous? Yes, there are several birds that occur in New Guinea, the hooded patohui being one of them, that is known to have poisons in its feathers, poisons in its skin. The local people know that. They don't eat them. They know them as rubbish birds because they at very least don't taste very good, and at worst can be quite heavily poisonous. An amazing question about Scutagera in Jersey. Someone asking if Scutagera centipedes, I don't have a photo, creepiest looking creature on the planet. Someone asking if they occur in the Channel Islands. Yes, they do. And I don't know quite how numerous they are. Somebody who's in the Channel Islands could probably answer that better than I could. They are venomous, so don't handle them yourself because they can bite. What else we got? Isla and Jay from Cardiff on Twitter. Do animals self-isolate, and which are the best at it? What an amazing question. So, I mean, yes, there are lots and lots of animals that will, for example, go into hibernation, go into stasis, go into certain stages of their life where they remain not do anything for long periods of time. One of the coolest that I can think of is the lungfish. The lungfish.
Have you smelt it in real life?
Which animal has the most pungent poo? I think otters have pretty amazing poo. It's called spraint. It's variously described as smelling like freshly cut grass or like violets. It's usually used as an advertisement. It's placed in a big prominent place where other otters can find it and smell it and target it, and is used as an advertisement. What else have we got? Hattie Cameron, do animals genuinely get sad and happy, or do we project those emotions? A massive question, one of which people have been asking for generations. Anyone who's got a dog, I think, could answer that question for you. There is no doubt that our dog gets both happy and sad. Ella Abbott, how do honey badgers survive the poisonous bite of a poisonous snake? Poisons! Poisons! Poisons and venoms! Poisons and venoms. It's a venom. It's not a poisonous bite. Honey badgers are just the toughest animals on the planet. As everyone knows, honey badgers don't care. They have very, very tough skin, very long fur, which is going to disseminate some of that venom before it actually gets ejected into the bloodstream. And then they are just tough as nails and incredibly resilient to the effects of a bite. I've seen a honey badger bitten by a cobra, lion off their prey. They are absolutely nails. Ollie and Jess Chilvers, 7 and 5 in Shropshire, want to know what the fastest animal in the water is. Generally considered to be the marlin, with sailfish, tuna, and shortfin mako shark being close behind. Are there any animals more intelligent than us humans? Where's that gone? I can't get it back. That's a really good question. So, I mean, there's lots of animals that in their world are with all of the others in its group, and therefore be able to coordinate themselves enough to build an air conditioning system, to build a complex structure that they can live in, to go on raids, to go and overwhelm other animals, is perfect in its intelligence. Simple, yes, but absolutely perfect. And they obviously do not destroy the environment that they depend on, which we as human beings do. So there's a lot of people who would argue that they are more intelligent than us. Okay, questions waiting on Facebook. So I almost certainly didn't get to you. I am really, really sorry. I am going to do my best to do this again, but clearly we've got technical issues that we need to get round before I can consider doing this again, because I don't want to be leaving you out there hanging with lousy comms. I'm really, really sorry about that. Hopefully my friends at BBC will be able to help me out. We'll be able to turn this into something a little bit better. For now, I want to finish off as I started by giving a massive shout out to all of my friends who are working in the National Health Service, all of my friends who are working in the services, all of my friends who are out there doing their bit to keep us all up and running. We owe you everything, and thank you. A massive, massive thank you from me. And to everyone out there, keep washing your hands, stay safe, keep your immune system as bolstered as much as you possibly can, eat well, and all my love from me, Stevie B.
I reckon leave it there.